There we go. Hopefully that's coming through for everyone. Okay. So yeah, just a little bit about us to start. We're independent. We're not owned by anybody. We're established in '99 and specialize in charity insurance or not-for-profit organizations as well as community groups, bowls clubs, anyone that is run on a not-for-profit basis. We should have a good go at quoting them. Any size of charity and any sort of not-for-profit organization is our bread and butter, essentially. Within that, we've over the decades we've been around. We've discovered, village halls are in need of a scheme, and we developed it initially with Ansvar, who some of you might be aware of, and then we've also acquired relatively recently, over the last few years, a second scheme with Kaveya. A few of the decisions made by Ansvar we didn't like at the time, so we made sure we had a second sort of backup option, and they actually play off each other really nicely, and we can have an alternative to look at when we're looking at our sort of village hall clients. We provide fully advised sales, which just means we recommend covers that you should have. We sort of make a point of pointing them out, describing what they are, how they might be able to help you as a committee in terms of what you're doing and what activities you're running, and being there if you need help with claims, and of course policy management and advice. Just being present, really, having a phone number you have, you can call and get through to someone pretty quickly. We don't ever really miss calls, so if we do, it's just a voicemail and you get a call back, as you'd hope. But I don't know about anyone else. When I'm calling a business these days, it's super difficult to find the phone number, and it's always a bit of a struggle. But that's what we're keeping around for as long as possible, and hopefully indefinitely as well. So values of using an insurance broker, why not just go direct to an insurer? There's a few reasons for that. And the first part is identifying that gap in coverage that you might have, looking at covers that we'd recommend to you, highlighting relevant exclusions and conditions that might be hidden away in a policy wording. So we've had a case recently, actually. We do use Aviva as one of our charity markets. They have a particular condition which, if we were comparing, let's say, Ansvar's charity policy to Aviva's charity policy, we were looking at particularly laptops on cover under all risks, which is a section, basically portable equipment anywhere in the UK. And there was a particular case which had that cover, and they needed to make a claim, and Aviva's policy actually didn't cover unattended items left in vehicles, even if they were locked, whereas the Ansvar policy did. And that's something that maybe if you're buying insurance yourself, you might not spot, which is handy to have that broker there to sort of point that out for you and say, look, we can see you've got laptops cover. Be aware that that's a condition to consider when you're weighing up the options of which insurer to go for. And the next point, of course, claims advocacy, making sure you understand what's going on, how it usually works. If something doesn't sound right, you can call us, you can call a broker and question that. We'd obviously use our experience to say, well, that is just how it goes, or actually the insurers are dragging their heels, or the loss adjuster they've appointed is not performing the way we'd expect, and we'll be able to get involved, make a few calls, and then sort of get that moving a bit more urgently, and make a complaint, as I've done before to many insurers, is make an official complaint and get it moving much quicker. And again, support team, yeah, you can call us, of course, at any point during the policy period. Even if you're not our client, we still take those calls. We still give advice, and a bit early there, and still help where we can. So, yeah, more than happy to discuss these sort of issues you have over the phone. And risk management advice as well, just worth mentioning. Some of our insurers do have facilities. Ansvar have a risk management self-assessment form, which is one side of A4 these days, or one or two sides of A4, and it's just ticking, yes, we do risk assessments, yes, we have our fire alarms checked, that sort of stuff. And the more yeses you can tick, you can actually have a sort of bit of a saving on your policy. So we make sure we point those out to people where we can, especially renewal things like that when we're looking at insurance policy anyway.
Adam, I think, sorry to interrupt, I think your volume is certainly dropping in and out a little bit for me. So I don't know if it's about being a bit closer to the microphone, maybe.
I will try my best.
Lovely, thank
Try
you.
and bend it towards my mouth a little bit more. How's that
Thank
sounding? Is that
that,
okay?
that's a bit better. Lovely, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on to a few sort of issues or things that is worth pointing out. So checking your cover. Each renewal is obviously the best time to check through the details for the next 12 months, make sure everything is okay. If my volume does drop out again, do let me know, Lisa. I'll just unplug the microphone, maybe go from the laptop instead. Um, but yeah, renewal is the best time to sort of be communicating with your provider, making sure they understand what you're doing. Things like income, making sure you understand what's included as income. Um, Grants, gifts, and donations are usually defined as income. It's worth checking what the definition says in your policy for that in particular, but it usually is everything turnover. Um, so, okay, business interruption cover. Again, if you have this, it's designed to protect your income. So if you've got an indemnity period of 24 months worth of cover, that should be the income you've projected for the next 24 months, including the end of the 2 year period, what your income would be then. So that should take into account things like inflation, trends in your income. Do you get slightly more every year? As are you anticipating maybe increasing the hiring cost at any point? So it's just worth having a think about that, making sure you understand how long you're covered for, and yeah, if it needs increasing, making sure if you increase your income, are you looking at that? I mean, as a broker, we automatically pick up that point. If someone increases their income, we automatically give them a poke and say, you've got loss of income covered. You need to also make sure you're increasing that and have that discussion with them. But the benefit of that, maybe that's missed if you go to an insurer, but hopefully not. Wages, of course, making sure they're correct. Your number of volunteers, activities, that should all be listed in your policy. A lot of policies will have a standard set of activities that are covered, or maybe excluded activities that aren't covered. Um, if you can't see what you're doing there, noted in your policy schedule, um, definitely worth checking. So making that call, making sure, hey, we do an after school club. It's not noted under our policy. We're running a village hall. Is that covered? Maybe not. Maybe it's something the insurer needs to add on there. Um, yeah, definitely worth checking. Silence cover. We've seen a few renewals over the years which don't have this included, and we're never sure why. It's usually an automatic addition. It's again usually has a £1,000 excess, so it can be easily missed. But if you don't see that excess noted, where you usually see your policy excesses, might be worth, if you've got buildings cover, really valuable one. We do see lots of claims for this. It can be like it reads there, tree root problems, drainage problems, the neighbouring trees problem, burrowing underneath and affecting your foundation, or some soil issues as well. Um, Useful one to have. We do see more claims than we should, but it's important ones to make sure it's on there. Sometimes we do see that included, or people opting to not have it on. It doesn't cost any extra to add it on, so it really should be added unless you're in a high guidance area. Then maybe there's an increased excess or price to add, but worth knowing it's on there and it will have to help if you have an issue.
Adam, sorry to be a pain. I
Yeah,
think
that's okay.
I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think the your volume keeps going in a bit in and out. Is that the same for everybody? Is it is for
Yeah,
me? It is, yeah. So it's,
Okay.
I didn't know if it was just the way I was receiving it, but if everybody else is receiving it, would it be good if we could pause it and perhaps use your other microphone? Would that be all
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. I'll just try unplugging this one.
Lovely, thank you.
That, can you hear me automatically now?
Oh,
Or
that's much better. That's much
yeah,
better. Thank you. It'd be
okay,
such a
good.
shame if people don't get everything that you're saying. Lovely, thank
Yeah,
you.
sorry about that. No problem at all. Where were we? So we were here, trustees indemnity. So hopefully, yeah, any issues again, let me know. It might just be a connection issue, but I'm on the Wi-Fi, so it shouldn't be too bad. But hopefully this is okay. But trustees indemnity, we will dig into a little bit more in detail about what this is. But that's a pretty much a standard we automatically include on our village hall policies, in particular, one that's usually thrown in on charity policies automatically as well. But yeah, we'll dig into the details of that, what it is, what's defined as a trustee, for example, a little bit later on as well. And public liability insurance, again, usually there's a standard limit of 5 million on a lot of these village hall policies. If you run an after school club or a youth club and work with vulnerable adults or children, you might want to consider increasing it to 10 million. A lot of, schools will automatically have 10 million because they're working with kids and there's a higher risk of if something goes wrong, it could go very wrong. Worth considering, might be one you want to look at increasing, and sometimes the cost to do so isn't that much more on your policy. And then an afterthought, apparently, but there's a few other sort of covers here. If anyone has any questions on these at the end, let me know. We get asked a lot about personal accident cover, and if that's not on there, are accidents not covered at all? Well, not quite right. You've got public liability insurance. If someone tries to sue you and say you're at fault for their injury, then your liability covers should respond to that, pick that up, and your insurer would defend you or pay out if they can't, then if they can't defend you. But personal accident cover is a little bit different. But yeah, any questions on that at the end, do let me know. So, trustees indemnity. This is a little bit of a snippet of an insuring clause within one of our insurers' policy wordings. I'll try not to read through it word for word, but we're just going to focus on point one there at the top. So, trustees indemnity, what is covered will pay all amounts for any claim made which a trustee or director becomes legally liable to pay arising from any wrongful act. So, if we look at every word in there that's bold and italic, that is defined to mean something that you might not think it means. For example, a trustee and director is just a trustee or it's just a director in our heads, but for insurers, it's it carries like a whole definition in the policy wording that you might not be aware of. So, a trustee could be a trustee, it could be a director, it could be a member of a management committee, or it could just be a employee acting in a managerial or supervisory capacity. And again, employee is defined further there. That can include a volunteer, which is why you've got employers' liability cover to cover employees and volunteers. Employee can mean a volunteer acting in a managerial supervisory capacity. So it's not just trustees for a incorporated charitable body. It will just be pretty much anyone acting in that managerial capacity in that respect. Um, Wrongful acts, this is actually what is covered. So that can be breach of trust, breach of duty, misusing trust funds, and anything else that's listed there as well. Um, Breach of duty, that could be, I suppose, if you're investigated by the Charity Commission for um, not using donate, well, I suppose it's more of a misuse of trust funds, but not using donations in the way that the it was expected for that charity, not using the income in a proper way. They could investigate you for that. Yeah, there's loads of examples we can send around. We do have a document which provides some claims examples. It gives you a bit more of an idea of how it responds in the real world. So if we go back to the insuring clause, we're looking at point two now. So where what would be covered under one, but the charitable body becomes legally liable instead or obliged to indemnify the trustee um, because of a governing document or indemnity clause in your governing document. And it's still, again, arising from a wrongful act, as it always will be for this particular cover. So where that is essentially saying, if a trustee is liable, but the charitable body has to respond to it instead. So that is still a useful clause for CIOs. A lot of you probably are familiar with where CIOs limit the trustee's liability. But if the charitable body becomes legally liable instead, then this cover can still respond and help out. Charitable body doesn't have to be a charity. Charity is defined as a volunteer organization in this policy. So what we think of it as a charity completely changes when we're looking at insurance. Um, it's a bit of a minefield with all of these definitions, I know, but again, brokers can help bridge that gap, help you understand, hopefully, what's covered. But yeah, a charitable body can be any of those listed below the charity named as per the schedule, and then not-for-profit company, a CIO, it could be a CIC, could just be a volunteer organization. So it could be any of those things. Here are some of the claims examples. I won't read through all of those. We do have a document again. I can email round or email Lisa to email round as well if you like. That has these and a couple of others in as well as a little bit more of an explanation, just generally of what trustees indemnity is covering. We'll go for shall we go for the breach of trust just at the top there? So, if trustees mishandle the winding up and distribution of the remaining assets, the creditors could allege the charity was unable to pay them due to that incompetence of not performing that sort of role. So, they managed to claim for the policy, claim on the policy, £6,000. I mean, don't know how. Don't have a reference for that, of course, but that's just an idea of a little claim that could happen. We do offer, it's worth mentioning as well, trustees indemnity is a particular cover that's on a claims made basis, which means it has to have cover in force at the time of the claim rather the time the claim is made rather than when the claim happened. So if you closed a charity and you had a claim come in after you'd lapsed your policy, if you hadn't chosen to extend your trustee's indemnity cover in particular, you would not have any cover in place. So what we'd recommend as a broker, whenever someone closes or ceases to exist or closes the charity, ceases to operate, I should say, then we'd recommend run-off cover for trustees indemnity, usually fairly inexpensive, but it extends cover for 12, 24 months, however much you need or are worried about, just in case any claims come in after you've closed or because of the way you've closed, for example. Real. So moving on to under insurance, so buildings, obviously the biggest asset for village hall committees and the one you need to make sure is correct really the most. Condition of average you may have heard of again. If you are underinsured, you will only get so much help from the insurers. A little example on screen there. If you're 70% underinsured, the claim will only get paid out 70% of the true claim value. So if you're looking at £10,000 claim on that example, you'd only get £7,000 from the insurer, and you'd have to find the other £3,000 yourself because they think it's badly underinsured and they've applied that condition, which is in your policy wording. VAT, we always say it should be included. New builds might be exempt. You might not need to pay it on a new build. But if you have a partial loss, the contractor will be charging VAT on their work. So, and that's what the insurer needs to pay. They need to pay that invoice in full. So, again, it says there, again, it might be some rare exceptions that if you're VAT registered or you can claim back that back on any of those sort of building work or repairs, maybe that's a different scenario or situation. But yeah, 99 times out of 100, VAT needs to be included on there. It's on, I think, all of our policies as well. There's not been any cases where they've excluded that, and we've got we must have thousands of village halls on cover now, so it's yeah, definitely an essential. And the risks to a committee, so just worth mentioning after we've spoken about trustees' indemnity, if you misrepresent the sums insured to an insurer, that could void your whole policy if they so choose to do. I've not seen that personally. I don't think any one committee have been that naughty yet. But it could be a trustees indemnity issue if they suddenly have a building loss and or like a fire, and the policy can't respond because the committee have had a valuation done, let's say, and they didn't go ahead with maybe what the surveyor recommended, but they didn't also get a second opinion, or they just chose to, well, we're going to stick to what we've got. We don't think it's as much as that surveyor thinks. But if there's not been any steps after that to try and make sure it's accurate or get a professional's opinion, then yeah, the insurers could take a dim view on that and say, well, you've not really done what we'd have liked there, and maybe that involves voiding the policy or not covering a particular claim. And yeah, you could have financial backers or councils who have leased a property to you and made you responsible for that building's insurance. It could turn into very quickly a breach of duty, um, part of maybe a trustee's indemnity claim in the future. And underinsurance can also apply to the business interruption section. As I mentioned earlier, that sort of coverage should be looking at the projected income over the next however long you've got insured, which for our village hall policies, it's pretty much always 24 months. Anything under that is not really anything we'd recommend, especially if there's buildings cover, or in particular if there's buildings cover. It's usually going to take more than 18 months to rebuild a hall if you have like a fire. We do have an example why on that as well. This is a hall from, I think, Somerset recently. If anyone's around or saw similar pictures in the news, I won't say the name, I won't name and shame them, but I'm sure yeah, a few nodding heads I can see there. But there was a fire claim. There was some solar panels on the roof as well, which were involved. I don't imagine they would have helped, but yeah, it certainly resulted in a sad scene here. But that took 14 months to repair and reopen the hall. Um, Business interruption cover will cover income that you usually would have over that 14-month period. But if you've got 24 months worth of cover, you can also continue claiming on that cover to top up your income. All of your hire is not going to come back straight away. There will be groups who have found an alternative 14 months on, your exercise groups, your yoga, your classes, things like that, that will have alternative agreements now, maybe long-term year contracts with someone else that they've just renewed 2 months ago, for example. And yeah, that loss of income cover will continue topping it up, topping your income up to make sure you're not losing money as now you're open. It's all fixed, you're open, but you don't have any hirers coming through. Then, yeah, it might take a while to regain those sort of hirers and get back to a stable position again. And then just moving on to some common questions we get asked. I've tried to sort of just anticipate a little bit, but before the FAQ, but we will have a yeah, nice Q&A at the end if you need it. But what I hear on the phone a lot is hires liability. What is that? How does that operate? How can we, make use of that? Who's covered by that? So yeah, I get asked about this pretty much every week. So it's worth talking about, I think. But usually this is a extension of your public liability cover. Public liability cover is essentially covering you as a committee for injury to a third party or property damage to a third party as a result of your negligence. So this is the sort of foundation cover of if someone says they've been injured, they'll try and claim against you under that section. Hire liability, so that's an extension of public liability. It's something that you can offer to your hirers if you choose. There will be guidelines for use, so usually who can use it. Businesses can't use it. People with wage roles can't use it. All of that sort of stuff. You'd expect them to have their own cover in place anyway. But this is just designed for that gap of birthday parties. You don't really expect them to take out insurance for your, for using your hall. So if they damage your hall, and you want to claim against them, there's not really an insurer behind them you can use, or if they run a bouncy castle, for example, as a birthday group, you'd want them to have sort of some sort of cover in place to make sure if anyone's injured as a result of that activity, it's covered. There's some sort of recourse there for the claimant. It's it's pretty much designed for that. I know bouncy castles are a hot topic in particular. A lot of insurers don't like them, but both of our village hall insurers can accept them, and they can accept hirers using them if they're covered by hirers liability as well. If they're a business or, not covered by hirers liability, their insurer should cover it. Otherwise, they're probably not allowed to do it, but that's a whole different story. Ooh, wrong button there. Um, yeah, hopefully that sort of helps fill a gap of, the sewing groups, the social groups, and the birthday party groups who you wouldn't really expect to have their own cover. You can choose to offer this out to them. But yeah, check with your broker, make sure you understand how to administer that, and any conditions that are surround that as well. Minimum security is always something I'm talking about with our clients. So there is a minimum standard in every policy wording, just like you'd expect in your home policy. There's that sort of British standard 3621 main lock that insurers like to see, but a lot of village halls will be moving towards key safes or keypad entries, anything to make, committees' jobs easier, because they're not going to want to come out every morning or every hire to unlock the hall or give keys away to every group that use the hall. So, yeah, there are lots of alternatives out there. It's worth talking to your broker about these. Both of our policies now accept key safes. One of them has conditions for what kind of key safe they like to see, and that's a key safe. Of course, you type in the code, you open the box, take the key out, unlock the hall, which is super popular. So one of them says exactly what key safe they like to see, what sort of standard of that, and a few conditions about how often you change the code. The other insurer just says we can only cover up to £5,000 worth of contents in the event of theft should the codes become known. So it's absolutely fine. If someone still uses that method to go in, set a fire, burn the hall down, that's still covered as a fire claim. But if they went in that way to steal, I don't know, electronics or something like that, something high value you don't have locked away inside, then that could be limited to £5,000. That is something we've negotiated with them recently. They didn't like e-safes at all, but we're seeing that sort of market trend evolve a lot recently, and that's something we always have to challenge insurers on, try to get them to increase cover or change their way of thinking sometimes. On occupancy definitions. So a lot of people say, well, we're not occupied, Adam. We only, we don't live there. We just hire it out every weekend or something like that. That's absolutely fine. The definition of occupied is usually, as long as it's hired out at least once every 30 days in the insurer's head, that is occupied to them. So if you have, I suppose, work's done, or you need to close for repairs, that is when the unoccupancy definition could come into play. again, as a broker, we're always on the lookout for that. When people say they're having refurbishments or solar panels fitted, we ask, are you closing the hall? How long are you closing the hall for? And we might need to point out that some things aren't covered once you're classed as unoccupied. And then lastly, index linking or inflation. Um, each renewal, your buildings cover will creep up a little bit and your contents cover will as well. It's very rare that it is 0% inflation, but sometimes I think it has been on contents recently. But buildings cover will usually keep creeping up. Each insurer has their own calculation of how they do that, but it's just to make sure it's not staying stagnant. It's making sure that, yeah, inflation that occurs in the real world for contractors, for building materials, is applied to your building sums insured, just to make sure you're sort of staying above, hopefully, um, level of inflation, making sure you're not suddenly underinsured 2 years later after you've had a survey, and there's been 10% of inflation over that 2 year period that hasn't been accounted for or insured for. Um, We've had some training recently which suggests inflation could be higher than insurers' index linking figures over the last few years. So super important. Get that building checked, get the sums insured checked. We offer a free one every 3 years for our clients. It's only free to you. We pay for it. So it is a proper sort of independent service. By a surveyor. It's all done online, and yeah, if someone's our client, then we can arrange that. And risk management, I will touch on as well. So there are plenty of conditions in the policy wording. One of them could be about play equipment. There's usually a standard sort of guidance on those with each policy, but it usually includes things like annual checks by specialists and then a record of yourselves checking, maybe weekly, maybe monthly, just to make sure there's no obvious hazards or broken equipment. Um, yeah, as long as you have those records, if a claim arises, you can pass that all over to your insurer and say, we've done everything you've asked of us, and your insurer will be absolutely happy to pay the claim or defend you if they think you couldn't have done more anyway. They do defend claims if they think it's financially viable as well. A duty of care for those who enter the premises. So, duty of care is a general condition on, again, this is pretty much every policy. If you have buildings cover and someone enters your premises or even just the land surrounding the premises that you are responsible for, you have to be making sure that land or property is safe for use or fit for purpose. Um, a great way of proving you're doing that is performing risk assessments, having some sort of log that you've gone through each room, you've ticked it off, that's safe, that's fine, no damage, no damage, something like that that you can prove to the insurer, well, we've checked it, we check it every week, that's as much as we can do. And that's a really great way of proving that you're meeting your duty of care. Again, yeah, fire safety is mentioned there as well. I think everyone does that every year, the fire risk assessment, just to make sure all of your fire safety equipment is in good order. You've got the right amount of emergency exits and they're lit up accordingly. All of that sort of stuff will be covered by a fire risk assessment. Which I think it might be a legal requirement. We don't really give legal advice, so I won't dig into that too much. But yeah, to prove that you're meeting that duty of care, again, that's something else that you can show to insurers to say, well, we've done everything we need to do there. Um, an interesting point is if someone trespasses onto your land or premises, they still are able to bring a successful claim against you if they get injured as a result of your maintenance of the land or premises. Whether or not it's successful is another question, but your insurer would still need to consider it. So if there's any obvious hazards, if there's I don't know, lots of sharp objects lying around in on the land, and it does have public access or just a fence that someone could feasibly climb, then it should be a case of making sure anything obvious is and within reason is made safe. A lot of time you will see this in the insurance world actually be a thing is if people manage to break into dilapidated buildings that are sort of scheduled for um they're scheduled for could destruction or demolition. Is the word I'm looking for. That usually comes with insurers' requirements of making sure you have, like a 10-foot high wall with, um, barbed wire all around the top, making sure absolutely no one can get in there, even by accident, just because of the uh, state of the property. And if it's scheduled for demolition, no one's going to be maintaining that. It's going to be very probably unsafe inside, or there could be things wrong with it. So, yeah, a lot of times you'll see it there more often. But yeah, you have a duty of care for anyone who might be on your land or enter your property, um, which is just worth thinking about. Bouncy castles, I touched on that again earlier, but we have terms to make sure that they're being done safely, or guidelines from the insurer. Both of our scheme policies can include cover for those, or can include cover to allow you to run them, or allow your birthday party hirer to run them. If you are covered with us, that make sure you give us a call. We've got guides galore for those sort of things. Yeah, do make sure you ask the question, and if you're with someone else, make sure you understand if it's covered or not. Yeah, super important one. Just squeezed in fireworks and bonfire events as well, as above. So we'll have terms, we'll have guidelines for those, we'll have attendance limits for those. And if you have more than 500 people attending those, maybe there's an extra premium. That's the kind of thing that needs to be looked at. But yeah, that's a popular one later on in the year. But it is usually covered as automatically by our policies at least. So building works or refurbishments. Again, I think I touched on this earlier, but yeah, one of the things we'll be pointing out is occupancy. Will the property still be hired out whilst works are ongoing? If not, are they going to become unoccupied? Do we need to tell insurers? Do we need to inform you of conditions or reductions in cover, or additional terms that could apply as a result of that? Sums insured as well. Once the works are complete, if you've done an extension, do you need more buildings cover? You probably do. Have you installed solar panels? Then yes, we need to increase cover. Lots of things to sort of consider there, but at that time we can consider new valuations if it's major works, or if it's solar panels, there might be a questionnaire from the insurer. So lots to take into account. But again, what we would do is identify that. We'd be asking those questions as soon as anyone rings us and says, we're having building works done, we're having building refurbishments done. We would ask all of the right questions to make sure we're telling the insurers the right thing. But the most important thing is just declaring it to your broker, to your insurer. JCT, again, if it is a major work of like an extension or extending the footprint of the property, you might enter a JCT agreement with your contractor, which states you have to take out cover in joint names with them. That is fairly simple if your current insurer can cater for it. If it's a large contract, it might need to go to a specialist, but your current insurer should be able to cater for it up to a certain value of works. But again, if you're having works done, the first step is just picking up the phone, speaking to the broker, and they should be advising you of this and asking the question, or having, like a building works questionnaire with you, that the insurer actually issues on these occasions. So it should be something that is discovered. You shouldn't have to worry about that too much, or have all of these things in your head whilst you're doing these works. just a case of pick up the phone, speak to your provider, make sure that you're declaring it, and they'll ask all of the right questions. And solar panels, solar battery storage as well. These will usually always require referral to insurers. Solar panels are very common. They won't really need referral individually. There may still be limits on what's automatically accepted. Um, they're defined as buildings cover though. So where you have anything insured for buildings, solar panels is under the buildings definition in case you need it there. But yeah, there might be some limits on the value. I think our Ansvar Village Hall scheme at the moment will automatically include them up to £20,000, for example, or 50 kilowatts in generating capacity. So there is some limits on there to be aware of or ask about if you're not sure. Solar batteries will be still quite new to them. They're still sort of hashing out the finer details of what they like as standard. It has leveled out more recently. This presentation, I think I wrote this last year, this particular paragraph, but when it was still very new to them, and they were applying some onerous conditions, which they don't do anymore since we've yeah worked with them over the last year about these, but it could be that they do still insist on some fire risk management you don't have in place, like a monitored fire alarm, if it's a significant risk to them based on the output or based on the capacity of storage. So, yeah, that's again, as soon as anyone mentions that to us, we have to send them a questionnaire most of the time. If it's an ANSVAR policy, for example, yeah, worth declaring. If you're not sure it's on there, just give us, give your broker a quick call, and we can always check our records, make sure it's added, make sure it's noted, it's been referred to the insurers before, for example. And yeah, that's exactly what I just said. So yeah, just make sure you make your insurance provider aware you're doing that, preferably ahead of time to give us some time to think about it or work with you to make sure cover's okay, rather than the mad scramble at the end to make sure cover's in place before you can turn it on. Yeah, just make sure you're picking up that phone is the most important bit of advice I think I'll ever give. So to finish off, we do have a blog we're trying to work on a lot this year. Some useful articles hopefully in there for you. I'll send around the slides. It's got the link there as well. But that will also be on our social media as well. Facebook, LinkedIn are the ones we're using at the moment, and those links are here as well. I can see there have been a few questions in the chat, but now is the time. I'll pass back to Lisa, and yeah, we'll take any questions and see if I can help with anything else. But I'll look through the chat as well, Lisa, if you could.
Lovely. Thank you, Adam. Thank you. If
No
you can
problem.
take the presentation down for us, that would be excellent.
Yeah.
Lovely. Thank you very much. I've been looking through the chat as it's been going. I think there are maybe a couple of things that we can pick up on in there. First of all, in terms of the slides, will you be able to provide the slides to me so that I can send them round to everybody? Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely
Perfect.
fine. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. And any of the material that you kind of mentioned through the session as well, if you can send that on to me, then I can circulate that round to everyone. So that would be fantastic too. That was certainly one of the one of the questions that came up during the chat. One of the first ones that came through was does interruption cover include repairs to the building? It was very early on in your presentation.
Yeah, so that is a loss of income cover under the business interruption cover will include just loss to well, it just covers loss to your income. The buildings cover would cover the repairs to the building. So it should be comprehensive if you've got buildings cover on the right basis. And then you would make business interruption claim in addition to the buildings claim you're making. So the buildings cover or the buildings claim should cover the building repair. if that makes sense.
Okay, does that answer the question? Yeah, I can see Teddy nodding. Thank you. Okay. Then there was a comment around we have a trustee who runs a monthly pub night in the village hall. He's doing it as a private individual, not as a trustee, nor on behalf of the village hall management committee. My concern is who is liable if someone claimed he was putting some of the profit into his own pocket. Is there a kind of an insurance comment that you'd like to make around that?
Yeah, good question. Was he doing it? So was he doing it on behalf of the hall or running it under the hall's name? Um, or-
He's not doing it under the hall's name. It's even more blurred. He's actually a parish councillor as well, but in some ways that's not my problem. If I was the parish councillor clerk, I'd be very worried. So yeah, it's just advertised as a pub night in the village hall. I'm the treasurer of the village hall, and I have to confess I'm a little bit alarmed that he's never shared with the public any financial records, etc. So it's in the hall, but it's not on behalf of the hall. We were actually approached to run a pub night, and we went, no, we haven't got the resource and the appetite to do so. So it's definitely him personally.
okay. So if he is doing it, yeah, individually, not using it to say this is fundraising for the hall or anything like that, then he should have or should be considering his own liability cover, first of all, public liability cover on his own, as in his name. You probably wouldn't want to, by the sounds of it, offer higher's liability to him. No, not interested in that. So
No.
yeah, he therefore should be expected to have some sort of cover, liability cover in place. So yeah, what I'd be looking at is, do you have public liability to run that event? If you damage the hall, our insurer will need you to have that. So in respect to the funds, not something I can really comment on. I mean, it's unless he's going to be covered by your policy, he'd have to be running it on a non-profit basis. So because your policy is a charity policy, your any hirer's liability that you extend to him would have to be on a similar basis of non-profit making. But yeah, if he's doing it on his own and he's got his own cover, then it's up to him, I suppose, what he then does with the money he makes from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, so there's a question from Mike, and he says, what is the standard cover for members of the public if they are bitten by a dog on our property?
Question. Yeah, so standard cover for members if they're bitten by a dog. What we usually say, so we get this question a lot actually when there is a village fete, and maybe there's a dog show within that fete. The cover will always exclude claims arising from injury or damage caused by animals. Um, it's just one of those things that the owner will always have to be responsible for. You can only do so much in terms of, telling people make sure you keep dogs on leads if that's what you want to do, or saying to people, our policy excludes this. In respect to the dog show, your insurer just probably won't want to get involved at all in that sort of thing. So it's one of those that's because it's excluded by your village hall policy. They wouldn't consider any claim made against you, but at the same time, I can't see how a claimant would make or try and paint you as responsible for injury caused by a dog that is not under your control. Bit of a difficult one, I suppose. If you're holding the dog show, you could be seen as responsible for bringing those dogs to a location, but if it's excluded by the policy, they won't be wanting to really get involved at all. If it's a general exclusion, which it usually is.
Yeah, this is actually normally where people are just walking their dog through the property, not actually a dog show or anything. So we've had a number of instances where dogs have attacked each other, which obviously is a property against property situation. But it's if somebody was then to get bitten, whether it just be a stray dog or a dog on a lead, You know, we've had people indicating that they would actually take a claim out against us under the Properties Act, I think they said, as we're the owners of the property that the incidents happened upon.
All I can advise then really is, I think both of our village hall policies exclude that in particular. So those wouldn't be suitable insurers if you did want cover. It would be a case of looking maybe somewhere else to see if there is anyone out there that can cover that. That sort of contingent liability of if someone did have to make a claim and they made a claim through or somehow made a successful claim against you for damage to them that a dog's caused them. If they've somehow managed to prove that you're at fault for that, I mean, what would usually happen on our policy would be, okay, we've got a hall, it's insured with ANSVAR, but they exclude damage caused or injury caused by dogs. If one of our clients came in and said, a dog walker was walking through and then that dog bit someone else that was on the field, we would say that's excluded. Sorry, can't help you. That client would then need to get some sort of representation out of their own pocket, I would imagine. So yeah, if I don't know if insurers out there would be able to cover that. It's a really good question, but our ones certainly don't. So yeah, if you do find any that do, we'd love to know. So yeah, if you do come across any, let me know, and something we can then use to challenge our insurers with and say, well, that's covered somewhere else. Why can't you do it? And yeah, there is a contingent liability risk, albeit minimal, of someone saying, well, you've brought all these dogs together for a dog show, or you allow dog walkers through your field, and that's what it's for, so therefore it's your fault somehow. Then yeah, I suppose there is that small sort of risk that they could make a valid argument, but yeah, that's how it would be on our ones at the moment.
Okay, thank you. They're using the same argument as if they tripped over a log, or as you were indicating, some other issue on the property, that they've injured themselves.
Yeah, I don't think they would get very far on that basis, because I mean that's under your control. Hazards on your land, that's something you can control, but dogs on your land, if it's public land, or there's a pathway or a footpath, it's not something you can control. So although your insurer might exclude cover and not want to represent you legally, I'm sure a lawyer, if you had to appoint one, would probably easily defend that claim, is my assumption. But again, I can't give legal advice, only insurance advice, so it's not something I can I can discuss too much. But I'd imagine they'd be able to defend you easily. It'd be really difficult for a claimant to prove it's your fault that dog's bitten them.
Thank you, Adam. Sheila, did you want to ask your question directly rather than me just reading it out?
Just try to unmute myself.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm particularly interested. We have a car park outside our centre, which is used both by the centre, users of the centre, and also the general public. And I'm just sort of concerned that we might have an issue where somebody has an accident. It might be somebody, a hirer, or it might be somebody nothing to do with using the village hall. And I'm not sure how well we are covered and what we need to do really to protect ourselves. We've got CCTV, but we don't have any disclaimer notices or anything like that. So I don't know if there are specialist insurance that would cover us for that.
No, you're probably absolutely fine. It's
Okay.
All of our village
That's
halls
good.
will be expected to have car parks.
Yeah.
It's something the insurer would, with common sense, know. Okay, yeah, it's a village hall. They're going to have a car park. So all they
Right.
would ask is the circumstances of the claim would be important. So if one driver hit another,
Yeah.
obviously not your problem, so to speak. It's not your responsibility. You weren't in control of that car. And therefore there's nothing to worry about there.
Okay.
If it's something like a pothole that's developed,
Right.
your insurer, if someone, I don't know, twists their ankle or breaks their ankle because they didn't see it and they stepped in it and they've fallen
Yeah, no,
over,
no.
if
It's in good repair, so but
yeah, if it's in good repair and you've
yeah,
got checks to prove that,
right.
you can say, look, here's the log where once a week or once bi-weekly we do a whole walk around the car park, make sure there's no hazards. Here's proof of that. We've signed it, on these dates, da da da, and
Mhm.
electronically or on a paper form or somewhere that's hanging up in the hall or something like that. Then, yeah, you should be rewarded for that. The insurers will take that into account and they'll say, look, that's something they can use to defend you. If someone tries to make an injury claim against you, their solicitor will write to you and say, we believe you're at fault for our injury. Your insurer would write back to them and say, actually, no, this committee have checked it. They've provided a whole log of when they've checked it and they've made sure it stays in a good state of repair. So
Right.
um, it depends on the circumstances, but hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. And is it useful to have something like a disclaimer notice, or is that doesn't really mean anything?
Yes and no. Sometimes it doesn't hold legal weight.
Mm.
Again, this is legal advice that I can't
Right.
give, so
Okay.
it's worth
Sure.
speaking to a solicitor if you want to get
Okay.
one that's correct and it actually carries legal weight. But I think I've heard from insurers before that sometimes it doesn't mean anything.
Mm.
Sign or no sign, you still have that duty of care to make sure
Right.
people are safe and the car park,
Okay.
for example, or hall is fit for purpose.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then you should be, um, somewhat closing it off until it's repaired, making sure it's kept safe or that no one can access that, or cones around a pothole, something like that,
Okay.
or
All right.
until it's repaired. So you've done your best that you
Done our
can, really.
best.
So
Yeah.
hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah. It does.
Yeah,
Thank you
good.
very much.
No problem.
Thank you. Were there any other questions from anyone? No? No hands going up? Yes. Yeah. Teddy. Can you unmute?
Right.
Well done.
Sorry about that. Couldn't find the right button. We have a query of a group of ladies that used to meet in our hall, but were told they couldn't meet any longer because they didn't have their own insurance. Is that correct, or would they be covered by our insurance? So it's not, it's just a group of ladies that meet for a knit and natter type activity.
Yeah, that's something that if it's on one of our policies, could be covered by the hirer's liability. There used to be a clause a few years ago of, I think it was ANSVAR that said if they're a regular hirer, they're expected to have their own policy, but we've now changed that particular part. And if they're a regular hirer now, we would be able to, or the village hall will be able to extend their public liability cover to them. So yeah, that should be, if it's with one of us, with one of our policies, it should be okay. But yeah, worth asking the question. Is it a policy you have with us, if you don't mind me asking, or is
No,
it
it's
someone
an
else?
ecclesiastical policy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just maybe worth asking the question if you have high-risk liability, and then if you do, who you can extend that cover to, extend public liability cover to some of your hirers, who, yeah, might be able to make use of that. Things like, knitting groups or social groups, like I say, are the ones that we wouldn't expect to have cover, and the ones that we try to help by making that high-risk liability sort of accessible to them. If village halls choose to provide it to them, you don't have to, of course. It's completely up to yourselves who you let use your policy, because if they have a claim, it's on it's on your policy at the end of the day. So it is at your choice, really, to do that.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
I've got two further questions. Sarah, did you want to go first?
I just wanted to build on that point. So we definitely don't want to offer our hirers the ability to extend our policy. So I just wanted to clarify, regular users, is it a must have that they should get their own insurance or a should have?
An expectation of the insurer. So if it's one of those, if someone burns down your hall, your insurer will then look at it and say, right, who was responsible and how, did you make sure they had their own insurance cover? Is it something we can recover costs on? It's it's one of those things. It's not like a policy condition,
Mm.
but it is something they usually expect, just because then it doesn't wipe out their scheme if you have like a full loss, and everyone else's policy in the village hall space will be affected essentially if they can't recover costs from somewhere else. But it's a really good idea to make sure any regular hirer does have their own public liability. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Nick, did you want to go next?
Yes, thank you. We've got a storage shed in our village hall car park. It's owned by another village voluntary group. It's timber shed. It's getting into a somewhat questionable state of repair, so it's flagged on our weekly inspections. The village group has said that they will monitor it and they will deal with it if it becomes unsafe. So the check on whether it's safe or not is kind of split between the two of us. Would we have any liability cover if there was a problem?
So shed, is it owned by yourselves or is it owned
No,
by that other group?
it's owned by the other group.
Okay, that's interesting. It's always worth asking your insurer. So your insurer would class anything on your deed of land as
Mhm.
potentially yours unless they've agreed otherwise. So as long as they are aware that there is an outbuilding that's owned by a third party group, and they're happy with that, the next step would be making sure they're aware that it's not in a good state of repair.
Mhm.
And yeah, they might want to offer advice to you to say it might not be yours, but if it's not in a good state of repair and it could be hazardous, then they might want to see something done about it. Maybe, some sort of barrier to make sure people don't accidentally get too close to it or near it or inside.
Yeah,
If it is, yeah, if it is dangerous, then definitely that's what they probably expect or advise. But yeah, it's always a bit tricky when it's owned by a third party. Usually they're okay with that, but if it's not in a good state of repair, all insurance policies will be on the basis of this property in a good state of repair, including its outbuildings and things like that. So yeah, it's worth checking. Definitely worth asking the question.
okay, great. Thank you. It's fragile, but probably not unsafe yet. But at some point it'll cross that line.
I'm sure if it's timber, then I'm sure a lot of sheds will be in a similar sort of
Indeed.
situation.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
probably not too much to worry about.
Yeah.
If there were to be a claim for injury because of the condition of that shed, that's why I've advised make sure your insurers know it's owned by a third party and they're happy that it's owned by a third party, so that when there or if there is a claim, they understand the situation, and if they need to defend you, then they've had a chance to give you the advice that they needed to give you.
Right. Thank you.
All right. No problem.
Fab, thank you. Are there any other questions you want to ask today? No? I think if there is something, if you come off the call, I quite often do this. You come off and you think, oh, why didn't I ask that? It's obvious now, but you didn't think of it at the time. If there is something that comes to you, just drop me a line. I can always forward it on to Adam, and between us we can come back to you with a response if you have got any of those questions that occur to you, in the middle of the night or whatever. Some worrying question about insurance. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending today. And absolutely special thanks to Adam for the presentation today and giving up your time to come and spend some time with us to explain the complexities of village hall insurance, which feels never quite straightforward because everyone's quite unique, aren't they, in terms of their situation and what they have going on at their hall. So thank you very much, Adam.